Okay, we should be good to go. All right, so here we are, Miss Tina. Just brought her in a minute or so ago and tied her here, just while I got the camera stuff set up. So she hasn't really been here for long. Try to get her a little bit cleaned up. We've had a lot of mud here, a lot of rain the last little while, so lots of mud out there to contend with. Kind of hard to keep everybody clean, but it'll dry up. So yeah, just tacking her up and getting her ready and stuff in the arena right now. I tend to do that with all of them for a while until they're really good at it, and then I'll move into the barn, tack her up in there. So, for the most part, it's going good with the getting her ready and all that. When you brought her, you had talked about, using with the brushes that you had, kind of using certain ones on her body and stuff, and going really quite quietly because she was really sensitive to. You don't need to be doing that. Really kind of sensitive to being brushed and whatnot. And I did find that to be true as well. However, we've just kind of been working a little bit on that, a lot with just kind of hands-on type of stuff. Just kind of feeling her and feeling where there's any ticklish spots. And I did notice, when you kind of run your hand down on her barrel or in the flanks and stuff, you'd really feel the skin kind of tighten up underneath of your hand, and really kind of bunch up, and she would get fairly touchy and ticklish and reactive to that. So I just find that with horses like that, oftentimes to just keep your hand there and just lighten the touch a little bit. Basically the feeling of kind of creating a little bit of space in between your hand and her skin, and then she feels that softening of the touch, and then she starts to breathe into that space that you create, and then she starts to relax a little bit, so that tension that is kind of there or is starting to build, she brings her awareness to that, but also that we give her a way to kind of relax into that tension and that uneasiness. One of the reasons for that being that, if we can't really brush her without her getting really tight, then putting the saddle and stuff on her is going to be a bit of an issue. And also putting leg on and, all the aids that we want to put on later could present a little bit of an issue as well. So want to just help her find a way to let go of that tension and that uneasiness and kind of breathe into it and find a bit of relaxation without necessarily having to, kind of brush her and work around her a little bit like you're on eggshells, just to try not to upset her a little bit. And so that's coming pretty good. You can brush her, obviously you're not going to attack her with the brush, but you can brush her how I would kind of describe as any other horse, just kind of brush the mud off and the dirt off and not really worry too much about all that other stuff. Good. And yeah, she's, like you said, she's a fairly sensitive horse. She's quite bold, more of a dominant type horse, I would say. So not really always too fond of being what she might perceive as being told what to do. So we've had to work a lot on these things. And not that we want to be bossing her around and dominating her, but we do need to be able to make some suggestions and have her kind of follow along with us and not just want to push into that pressure or kind of pick a fight or try to bite you or strike at you or kick at you, all of which he has done, you know, at different times. I feel like for the most part, we have kind of worked through the bulk of that. And I had a girth in here, but somebody seems to have borrowed it. Yep, there it is, way down there. Let's see if I can fish it out of there. So yeah, I feel like we've kind of worked through the majority of that stuff. And she hasn't, you know, kind of offered to nip or do any of that stuff for quite a while now. So I think we're on our way to being through that, hopefully. But it is in there for sure. It doesn't look like I'm going to get that out of there. So I will be back in a moment. Let's try this again. See if this works now. There we go. Atta girl. So anyway, like I was saying, I think we're past most of that behavior. You know, and oftentimes horses like this will amp all that behavior up. When they're in a new place, they're away from home, new places, new people, new routines. You know, they don't really know what the deal is, so sometimes a lot of that stuff just gets amplified. And fair enough. So, you know, some of the stuff that I talk about here that I've noticed with her may be stuff that maybe you haven't seen at home, or things that she has a little difficulty with, maybe stuff that you don't, you know, that you've done at home that was going pretty well. And that could all very well be. It's just, again, sometimes when they're away from their regular routine, these things can show up. So we just kind of work with what we have and go from there. So she's wearing, obviously, a surcingle. Overall, I would say, you know, wasn't a big deal with the girth or anything. I did, you know, normally what I do is put a rope on her and kind of girth it up a little bit and go through that procedure and rope around her feet and stuff and kind of get her leading from her feet, and anything that kind of helps her deal with and figure out what to do with different pressure. There's a lot of that too, is just a lot of those behavior things, and a lot of even the grooming thing. I would say it was more just a misunderstanding of what to do with pressure. You know, you'd touch her and it was kind of ticklish or whatever, and she would react to that, and touch her with the brush, I mean, or, you know, whatever. So just kind of introduced her to a bunch of different things to help her understand what to do when the pressure was a little bit higher than what she thought was manageable. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a lot of pressure. It's just a little bit more than nothing. So sometimes that's kind of a difficult thing for them to deal with. So I'll just give her a second here, kind of bring her attention back a little bit, and just kind of start to groom her a little bit up by the withers here. I'm just going to build that into just a little bit of a cue to kind of relax and come back to herself a little and reset if things start to get a little out of hand. And then we'll just go for a little walk. So we'll just start to work a little bit on a bit of a leading exercise, just to kind of see where she's at, attention-wise. Girl. So, you know, in the beginning, leading her, if something was a little bit got a bit uncomfortable for her, she would kind of lead you around or lead me around or kind of run past and drag you off with her, and you know, just to really kind of not a whole lot of regard for where we were or what we were doing or what we were trying to do. If she felt the need to leave, she was going to go, and you could either tag along or maybe you could come and catch her later on when she left you somewhere. So we're just working on kind of her managing this distance between us a little bit. Good. And just being aware of what we're doing. Going when we go, slowing when we slow, stopping when we stop. Being able to move the shoulders. That was a big one for her as well. Was being able to move the shoulders from left to right. She's got the lights of the camera there that she's seeing now, so that's new. So a lot of what horses like her do, you know, the horses that tend to be a little bit more bold and a little bit more seemingly in control, of which she really isn't. I think she's she doesn't present that way. She presents as this big tough girl, of which she is not. Yeah, have a look. It's okay to have a look. The reactiveness and stuff is what we need to work on, the thinking, and then not just reacting into something as soon as she gets a little bit concerned. And that's kind of what she does. She doesn't really think a lot about what's going on. As she reacts to it and then blasts her way through through the comfort. So if she walks up to something that's a little bit, she's uncertain of, no, wait. She comes to something that she's a little bit unsure of and uncomfortable with. She kind of edges up to it a little bit, winds her courage up as much as she can, and then pushes her way through, blasts her way through it. And that doesn't matter if it's just going over an obstacle or going through something or going over top of you if need be. So we had to help her kind of find these moments where she can just calm herself a little bit, start to breathe, start to think, put a little bit of thought into what she's doing, and not just be this big bully that runs through whatever she feels is necessary to get out of her way. You're either going to move or she's going to go over you, one way or the other. It doesn't really matter that much to her, as long as she gets to the other side of where she wants to be. Good girl. So we need to kind of help her find ways of not being so reactive. Good. So like I was saying, moving the shoulders from left to right was a very big deal for her because she didn't want to be, in her mind, kind of bossed around or told what to do. You had mentioned before that you thought that she saw you as a herd member because it's been the two of you for a long time. And I would agree with that for sure. However, I don't really think she sees you as a very significant member of the herd. You're the one that brings the food and the groceries and the roof over her head. But if she kind of needs to blast through you at any given time, then she's not too worried about doing so. Good girl. Yeah. So I want to be able to move her out of my space when I need to. If she starts to run into us, push into us. And this is just really, we spent a lot of time working on this stuff because, because without it, we're going to have a really difficult time getting through the basic, that's it. Getting through the rest of the basic stuff to help her find a way of doing the work that makes her feel good about it and makes it understandable to her. We could just kind of, take a hold and kind of put draw reins and all that stuff on, and yeah. Good girl. So I use a lot of noises, as you've probably noticed. Kissing noise is to go forward or to get some energy into what we're doing, to move the hind legs, more directed to the hind end. I'll make clucking noises for the shoulders. No, that's it, good. Shushing noise for backing up, and all these verbal cues are really handy through the groundwork and through the ridden work, so that when they have a better understanding of our body language and our verbal cue. Thank you. Then we can start to blend in the physical aids. That's a noise I use for kind of my verbal half halt. So for example, when we're in the riding part and we start to work on the half halt or introduce the half halt. Good girl. Then we can use the verbal cue while we start to introduce the physical aids, and then it starts to make a little bit more sense to them. Good for you. So I can move the shoulders now at a distance for the most part. Yeah. Thank you. Think a little bit. There you go. The shushing noise and the stepping backwards is a very good resetting tool. Backing up was also very difficult for her because, again, she doesn't really want to feel like she's being pushed around. So stepping back for horses like this is a big deal. And a lot of times they will react fairly strong to it until they start to understand the bits and pieces of what we're working on. I do a lot of rein back, a lot of backing up, because I find it to be a really beneficial tool as a bit of a mental reset, but also as a physical, a bodybuilding exercise, provided that it's done in a way that's beneficial. Right shoulder, thank you. You see a lot of horses being backed up where they're kind of being pulled back by their teeth with their nose on their chest, maybe running backwards for long distances. There's no benefit to that, absolutely zero. That just makes the rider feel like they're in control of something. But if you do a rein back in a way that is beneficial to the horse, it has some mental benefits and some physical benefits. Good. And she has a bit of energy. We just let her move around. It's not a big deal. I don't want to kind of squash the... Thank you. I don't want to squash that youthful exuberance out of the horses at all. But then we can start to just shape it and mold it and put it to a little different use than just tearing around. Good for you. Good. Once we can get to the point where we can start to move the shoulders over and maybe engage the hind leg a little bit, and then the hind leg, maybe reset there, move the left shoulder. Once we get to where we can start to do that from a distance, then we can start to shape that energy. We don't have to be squashing it. We can start to move it around and put it to a little better use, to where her body is actually moving in a way that is more beneficial to her and feels better ultimately. Because we can't take that energy and make her go quieter, or make her relax, or make her think a little bit, or make her do this, or make her do that. All we can do is try to move it and shape it and redirect it, and give her some tools that she starts to understand that when she does certain things in a certain way, how she feels in her body, how she feels in her mind, and that she wants to kind of look for that again, and look for that, ultimately start to look for that on her own. So we can get her to move through the body, investigate things if there's things around. That's kind of why I like to have a bunch of stuff around too, just to kind of foster that curiosity that they have. You know, let them stop and sniff and play with it, and if she picks it up in her teeth and scares the crap out of herself, then yeah. Good girl. It'll work a little bit on her understanding of energy and intention. So if I bring my energy up, that she goes. If I bring my energy down, yeah, good. Put a little bit of a bend in her body, and have her feel that and use that bending and softening in the body to find some letting down. So for example, from trot to walk, or just an opening of the body on the outside, the contracting of the body a little bit on the inside as she makes a curve. And on a big circle, it's very little, but it's a start. And then drawing her in a bit, pushing the shoulder, good. Sometimes you have to go to the nose and push the nose out and have the body follow the nose. Ultimately, we want to be able to work the body and ride the body and steer the body, and then the nose comes into the equation afterwards. But sometimes in the beginning, they need to follow their nose in and out. Good. And a little energy again. Touch her kind of where the leg would be with the whip. Good girl. Sometimes she likes to test that stuff a little bit. You can do that too if you like. I'm just going to try to go with her, not make her feel like I'm chasing her here, but just come a little smaller and just go with her. Stay a little bit in the girth area here. So it's not like I'm lunging her in the traditional sense of lunging, standing in the middle and chasing her around. I'm just kind of in this area. And going with her. And it's a little different sensation than if we're just kind of chasing her away, but rather we're going together, so that when you're in the in-hand work a little bit in the riding position, this is kind of a little bit of a lead up to that. Yeah, good girl. And then lots of time for her to just kind of rest and think about that, and just digest all of that. What she just did and how she feels, and that she wasn't in trouble for that energy. We were just going together, and I was just trying to shape and guide it a little bit. Good girl. So in the beginning, when I went to change direction, from left to right or vice versa, she really wouldn't let me do that. So what I had to do then was use the wall. For example, come into the wall like this, use the wall to slow her down or stop her, and then move the shoulder over. Occasionally there was some striking, some posturing, some threatening. Good for you. So all of the things that will ultimately make her quite a nice horse are also the things that tend to make them rather tricky to start. Good for you. What I liked about that, I got a lot of birds in here, so they're flying up in the stalls back there and they're kind of popping up out of nowhere. Good for you. What I liked about that, even though she startled and spooked, she was a little bit more mindful of me and she didn't offer to run over top of me. So I appreciate that. Nope. So being in a little bit closer here, oftentimes I'll start the horses a little bit more in hand like this. With her, it wasn't really, I didn't really feel like it was the best place to start because she was not very happy about, like I said, moving her over, moving the shoulders. Yeah, good. Good. So I had a little bit more in hand here. I can work a little bit on the flexion and the softness ultimately in my rein, just off the halter. I can step the shoulder over. Thank you. And then the hind quarter with a bit of flexion. Yeah. Again, just engaging the inside hind, being able to move the shoulders. So back with the left front, out with the right, back. We still have some stickiness in the back up, but it's much, much better than it was. Thank you. And then forward. And I can reinforce all of my my noises and sounds. If I step to the shoulder and put my whip a little bit, pick up on my inside rein. Feel how she is in the hand. If she pushes through or she's really heavy, I can address that here. I can step into the rib cage, put my inside leg on. Thank you. There she's getting a little frustrated and trying to nip on my arm. So the work gets a little harder, a little more mentally taxing for her. And then she starts to offer to chew on your hand. But we just kind of keep picking at it. Thank you. And then we'll walk out and just go for a little stroll. Good. Another reason why I like to have a bunch of stuff laying around is I can bring in little surprises. Not necessarily, again, not trying to sneak around her so we don't upset her. These things are going to happen. It's getting a little, it's letting the attitude show. Yeah, thank you. Let's think of it. There you go. Yeah, good. Good. That was partly my fault. I didn't mean to whack her in the chin, but I did. Good thing it's just a pool noodle. But so yeah, I like having these things just laying around because then I can randomly just pick them up and fling them around. And help them start to understand that when these things do happen, these surprises pop up, the rabbit runs across the trail or the birds fly up out of the bush or somebody walks past the show ring with a rustly coat on. That they can manage that. We need to expose them to a whole bunch of stuff. Like we talked about too, when you dropped her off, I had talked about lots of times when you run things down by their front legs in front of the leg, especially when they're moving. There can be striking and stuff at that, and there was. Good. 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 Good for you. And so I don't use these things as a sacking the horse out device, like, wave a whole bunch of scary stuff around until the horse stops moving and then call it good. Because oftentimes that just creates a horse that's frozen and not one that's thinking and understanding what they should do in that situation. So I would like to create brave and courageous horses, thinking horses, that understand how to manage themselves when things get a little bit overwhelming. At the same time, I don't necessarily want to throw the horse in the deep end of the pool and tell him sink or swim. I kind of like to be in the middle where I'm not there kind of hovering around and trying to bubble wrap them and protect every single thing that happens and keep them safe, hover in and save the day every time something happens. Somewhere in the middle, so to give them a good understanding of how to manage themselves when things start to go sideways, but also know that if things get really overwhelming, where they can turn to for guidance and help. Yeah. There sometimes seems to be, there's always both ends of the spectrum, it seems, where somebody is really over on this side and somebody else is really over on that side in terms of what you should never or always, or what you should do in certain situations. I find usually the answer for most things is somewhere in the middle. Good girl. That's it. Good. Woohoo, you're going to chase that, hey? You're brave. Super. That's probably where her little habit, like you talked about, of chasing dogs out of her pen comes from. So it's good that she's brave and kind of pushing the object away. That's the first time I've seen her do that. It's interesting. She hasn't chased any dogs either, thankfully. Good girl, good. And so I try not to dwell on any one thing for too long because I'm not trying to make it perfect each time. I'm just trying to make a bit of progress. Good. Yeah. You got some playfulness in you, huh? You do. Good. Good girl. Good. That's it. Good. Good. So she's very aware of things, obviously. We got the camera stuff in here today, so she's highly aware of that. That's good that she's aware of everything. We just need to work within that then. Give her the understanding that she can certainly notice things and be aware of things, but also that she's also mindful that we're here together as well. Good girl. Good. Good for you. Good girl. Good. Good. And then again, just a little bit of a break, a little bit of a mental reset. there, good. A little settling here, good for you, good. Good girl, good. Just anything that kind of encourages that letting down, relaxing, taking a bit of a deep breath like that, letting it out, kind of really starting to let down from the inside out. Just kind of feeling how she feels in the body again. Feel a little bit of a tightening under my hand. Nothing much, but just a little bit. So just kind of lightening that contact on her side. And feel her breathe into your hand a little bit. Good girl, good. Good. There's a little bit on this side. So really just kind of getting a feel for how she is each day. No, you can't rub on me. That's not allowed. And just bring her focus back here a little bit. Yeah. So she's wearing a bit, but she's not working off the bit. I tend to usually have the bit in their mouth fairly early in the work, but not really doing anything from it for a while. Might, kind of wiggle it here and there a little bit just to give them the sensation of what's to come. Good girl. Good. Good. That's it. Good, good. So I'd also like to kind of just take a little bit of a feel on the nose band of the halter. I can work a little bit on flexion. We can work on moving the body. Good. Can lead forward and just try to bring the neck out in a bit of extension and stretch down a little bit. So just starting to be able to ride the neck in different positions. Down, raise the pole up, step back with a little bit of elevation in the front. Go forward again, little flexion, little hind leg. And we'll go back to it again. Good. Yeah, good. And again. And just trying to get her focus a little bit more. That's it. Step back. Good. And switch hands. And work the other side. Yeah. Just be careful where we're going so we don't step on something we shouldn't. Move this shoulder. Yep. That's better. Good. Yeah, good. Lead her out and down a little bit again. Good. Re-engage the hind leg. There's a fly chewing on her, so she's cranky. Good. First sunshine in a week, and then the flies are back out. Good. Stretch her down a bit again. Good. Then we work on following our body language around. Little outside turn. Good. Little flexion in. Pick up on the inside rein. Move the shoulder. There you go. And forward. Little outside turn. Good. So she starts to kind of push through my hand. I can shush her back a little bit just as a little bit of a rebalance. Can use that as an aid without having to get strong with my hand and kind of contract the neck a little bit. Good. Good. Nice. And just opening up the body again. So a little bit more flexion. Bring the pole up a little bit. Yeah, good. Good. Nice. Good for you. Good. Not into me. Good girl. Yeah, good. So that's a lot of what we've been working on. You know, we don't always work on it for that long, but I just kind of wanted to run through the bulk of what we've been working on the last couple weeks, and you know, trying to get that connection and that understanding and that softness in her, so that as we move forward, the other stuff that we're working on has a chance to sink in and kind of make a little bit more sense to her. Good girl. And so I think I'll leave it at that for today. Feel that was pretty good. And yeah, good for you. But yeah, it's starting to come. She's a tough one. You know, there's not, she doesn't make everything super simple. But typically those are the horses that tend, in the end, you know, if they have a show career ahead of them or whatever it is that they're going to do, that tends to be the type of horses that excel a little bit more. So we'll just kind of keep chipping away at what we've got started here. And good girl. And we'll build from there. So, all right. Well, thanks. I'll send that off to you, and we'll talk to you soon.